It is October 19th, Tuesday. I have a break in between work. But I just wanted to speak to, it's interesting. So, I mean, I'm here with family, clearly, right? And friends, and so, it's an opportunity to catch up. So I'm sharing with them, just not everyone, but, the people, the select few that I trust. And just sharing with them that, I'm having more dreams, and this is what the dreams are meaning to me. And after yesterday, I'm like, okay, clearly I'm not done healing. that dream that I had was like a projection of the future. And just this realization that, okay, I'm not done. And accepting, really, it's an acceptance of where I am. And I'm sharing with my sister-in-law about, what's just been happening, and with me and Hannah, and with these other people in my life, right? Or what's unfolded, and some of the things that I learned about, being blocked on social media. And then I didn't think it bothered me, but clearly something, specifically with Hannah, and I think, and so I've been processing it with my sister-in-law, and I told her, I'm like, I guess I thought it didn't bother me in that moment, because I realized, okay, that's where she's at, right? She's needing space from me. Got it. I'm not going to reach out. Like, there's no reason for me to reach out. But as I was sharing with her, like, she's like, you're getting flustered about it. And I'm like, I am? And so we're trying to understand, like, why there's still this disconnect between when something unfolds and then when I feel it. There's still this time delay, if you will. And I'm like, I don't know why. And I'm like, well, and then now I'm going even work back, right? Like, in terms of my experiences with emotions. And then I said, well, for the longest time I've been blocked emotionally. I to a certain degree, especially when it was about confrontation, I was blocked, where I would numb myself. I would detach emotionally to be able to function. And then realizing, like, I did that out of survival in that moment. And it wasn't until I felt safe enough to really look at it. Maybe, I mean, because there's this, it's not just with Hannah, it's with all these other people that are crossing my path, that it's taking me a while to process and then experience the feeling. Like with this fire sign, right? Who, this was like last week that I sent that message out, and not even realizing that it bothered me, in that moment. I was like, okay, whatever. Like, and I thought I let it go, but then realizing, like, it did bother me, and this was why, right? That being on the other end of, having someone not be honest with me, and me sensing it and confronting him in that way, through the voice recordings that we leave each other, and I mean, so it's like in my head, I'm thinking I'm letting it go, but then emotionally, there's still something there. So I'm thinking, okay, if this situation with Hannah is clearly coming around again, I'm getting dreams about it. I had more dreams last night about her. So clearly, I need to work through that. And so I'm trying to figure out, well, what do I need to do? And the first dream that I shared before, I'm just going down this path. I'm doing my own thing. And I see her up ahead, and she's trying to hide from me. Like, and I'm seeing her at a distance, like wondering, like, why is she trying to hide from me? But I could see her frantically, like not knowing what to do. And then I approach her. She's doing this, like she's purposely hiding. And I'm like, hey. And I'm like, out of concern, like, hey, how are you? Like, what's going on? And then she's going off at me, telling me, I should have known. I'm like, I should have known what? And then she's like, this is my neighborhood. I'm like, I didn't even know you lived here. And then out of nowhere, I'm saying, own your shit. Like, own it. Own your part in it. And I'm like, in my dream, I'm very, like, also confrontational towards her. And I woke up thinking, like, what the hell? Like, why am I cussing at her? Why? And so I guess I'm still hurt, maybe. And so I'm trying to process it with my sister-in-law. And then she's like, you have to acknowledge the fact that, one, this person may not apologize for anything. And I'm like, I didn't expect, like, I was planning on just moving on. Like, I didn't expect to cross paths with her at all. Nothing. Like, I had no expectations of that. But clearly, my soul is bringing it back to my awareness for me to resolve. And then that's when my sister-in-law was saying, well, as I'm hearing you talk about her, like, you're getting, riled up, like, flustered about it. And I'm like, okay, so then, okay, there's something for me to heal still. And then that's when my sister's, and then I'm trying to figure out, well, what is it? And I'm like, well, I guess it's that, is if that's what I'm saying in my dream, like, own your stuff, like, to take accountability for her actions, right? But then my sister-in-law made a good point. She's like, what if she doesn't see it that way? What if she doesn't see that, what she did affected you too? Because some people don't. And I'm like, that's true. Some people don't. So then it's like, I just need to resolve it within myself, right? No expectations for this other person. No expectations to even apologize. But just feel it and let it go, right? Transmute the energy. So I'm like, okay. So that was this morning. But last night, we were still talking about it. We stayed up talking about it. And she's teaching me, right? Assertive communication skills. Therapist. But I mentioned it to my colleague, and she's like, I don't understand how you don't get this. And then I told her, I'm like, it's because I'm emotionally invested. She's like, how are you emotionally invested with her? Like, you didn't know her that long. And I'm like, just because I didn't know her that long doesn't mean I wasn't emotionally invested. Like, I was. I care about her. Like, I love her. Like, how can I not be emotionally invested? I jumped in, right? So there's that acknowledgement on my part. I jumped in. I opened myself up to loving this person for that time period that we did. So clearly I'm being affected by the loss, in essence, too, at the same time, and the rejection of it, and what I experienced, but knowing that it's not completely, like, there's no fault in that. Like, I take ownership for my part of allowing things to happen, of not speaking up in that moment. So I acknowledge that. And I think there's that because I acknowledge that I allowed it to happen at the same time, that I can't be upset at her, but for whatever reason, I must energetically still be holding on to these emotions. So I'm like, okay, I'm trusting my higher self. If it continues to be brought to my awareness, I need to work on it, right? So in my dream last night, we're interacting, and I'm getting invited. I'm being invited somewhere, and she's there. And like, I have my own little room. And then, so there was that scene that I remember. There's another scene where there's like a bed, and then the floor is set up to sleep on. And my sister-in-law's with me, with my niece. And somehow we ended up sleeping on the floor, and she's on the bed. And then she's saying something to my sister-in-law that triggers me in my dream. And I feel being triggered. And I'm trying to defend myself. And my sister-in-law turns to me, and she's like, no. I'm like, okay, in my dream, right? And so, and then there was another scene where I'm walking away. And it's like, it feels like we're at a movie set, or like there's it's like some type of workplace. And I'm walking away. That's all I remember, is that I'm walking away, and like she's somewhere in there in the background. I'm just walking away in my dream, from what I remember. So I woke up, and I'm like, I dreamt about her again. So that's when this morning my sister-in-law was just like, you need to just accept, right, that you may not get an apology, that she may not see it from your perspective, because some people don't, and you need to be okay with that, and not have the expectation, not have any expectations from anybody. And she's telling me this, I'm like, I just said this to my clients this past week, right? And I told my clients too, I'm like, it's a lot easier said than done when we're in it emotionally. But last night, my sister-in-law was just like, I just don't get it. How can you not see it in that moment? Why is it taking you so long? Why is there a delay between when it happens and you reacting? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, but you communicate so well. And I'm like, and that's when I told her, I'm like, I've been telling this. I told my supervisor, my old supervisor, I'm like, when I'm not a really good communicator. And I don't think any of us are when we're emotionally invested in a situation, because we're in it. There's an emotional connection. And so we get triggered. And it takes time, right? And that awareness of like, okay, clearly I have these expectations, so I need to not have those expectations and be okay with not getting an apology and giving myself that sense of resolution, right? Like she said. And then I was thinking about it this morning. I'm like, okay, guys, speaking to my clients, right? I tell my clients this all the time. I will not ask you to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. So I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm a blast, right? This is something that I tell my clients, okay, I'm gonna do this. And so I opened it up to the universe. I was just like, bring it, bring it. Help me put into practice what I tell my clients to do. Help me do the same thing, right? And if that means our paths have to cross for me to actually implement it, then that's what will happen. And I'll be prepared. I'm working on it. This is my higher self telling me, work on this. Because if right, if I'm entertaining the idea that my dreams are preparing me for the future, then I need to work on this and speaking up, right? In that moment, speaking up. And it was interesting because the word choices last night, I was telling her, I guess I have to defend myself. She's like, no, don't defend yourself, because and I'm like, that's right. If I'm in defense mode, it's different than speaking up, right? Defensiveness means I'm preparing myself for attack. Whereas if I just speak up, the cognitive awareness of what that word means is going to be different. If I'm just speaking up, I'm just speaking my truth in that moment. I'm not doing it in a way to battle, right? Defensive, if we're defensive, then it's because we're ready for battle. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to be defensive. I don't want to emotionally react, right? I want to respond diplomatically. I want to respond in a way where my voice is still heard. And I'm able to release emotionally with those words what I need to release in that moment, so that I don't take it with me afterwards to process for days. But I was thinking about that. I'm like, why is there this pattern? I'm like, well, this whole journey has been about me speaking up. This whole journey has been about me not getting trampled over, right? Not pleasing other people, but for me to own that power, to regain that power, sense of control back for myself, that, hey, I have a voice, and I'm worthy and valuable enough to speak my truth. And not have the expectation that as long as I can speak it and energetically put it out in what I need to in a diplomatic way, right? Not react emotionally, be emotionally reactive, right? Because usually when you're emotionally reactive, you're not thinking about it. You're just wanting to defend or push back, right? But just sitting with it. And so as she was telling me yesterday, she's just like, sometimes, because my sister-in-law is really great at confrontations. So I'm learning a lot from her. And so she's just like, Yubi, you can just sit with it and stare at them. She's like, I do that all the time. And she tells me, she's just like, and the people that I've done it to, they're like, why are you staring at me? And then they get upset at her. And then she's like, there's no expression in her. She's like, I'm staring at you because I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. Does it bother you? And then she said, ask them a question back. Does it bother you? And then we were like role playing. In essence, she was helping me role play in that moment, because I explained the other situation with that childhood acquaintance. That was just, there was a sense of attack that, well, why are you doing this? Why this? Why that? And isn't this enough for you? And I'm just like, yeah. Like I told her, and I'm like, and I remember shaking as I'm highlighting, and in my head, I'm like, my thoughts are like, why are you shaking? It's the muscle memory. It's the body memory that remembers what that feels like. Like our cells, the thing is, our cells can hear. Our cells can feel the energy. It's listening to the silence. It's listening to the energetic silence that gets put off. The things that people don't hear, like 3D here, but your body feels the energy. So there's a sense of like your body can listen. If we look at ourselves in that way, that it's not just our ears that listen, but our whole body that listens. But they're listening, they're ability to listen is different. It's at an energetic level where they feel the vibration coming off. And it makes sense in terms of trauma. There's research that shows that your body retains, it's a muscle memory. So when we experience a traumatic event, our bodies will tighten. Why? Because it's the muscle memory. And I remember having another colleague saying that after their partner experienced a trauma, he was trying to support her and actually scheduled a physical, like a body massage, and then he said she was crying the entire time because there was this like emotional release that was occurring through the massage, which makes total sense. And then there's that other there was this book by an Asian author who was he was studying water molecules and the impact of sound waves on the water molecules, and even statements that were being said, there was this glass of water, 2 glasses of water, and one of them had a statement that was put on there, like, I hate you or something, and speaking that to each, and then testing the water molecules, like doing under a microscope, and you can see the water molecule, like the one with the more negative statement was all jagged, and then the other one that had the loving words was beautifully like shaped. So if our bodies have water, then it's going to respond in that way. Like, it's just mind-blowing. So anyways, I'm surrendering to that process. I'm getting these dreams for a reason. Something will either occur in the future where our paths will cross, and I'm being prepared for it. I'm being emotionally, it's being highlighted in my dreams because I need to address it. I need to work through this energy that's lingering clearly, and I'm giving myself permission to do that. I'm telling the universe, okay, bring this lesson on again, because clearly I didn't handle it how I needed to, or I handled it as best as I could in that moment. And now that I have more awareness, if it's brought back to my attention, I can handle it a little bit different because I'm more aware. Bring it, right? Bring it. I need it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. So I'm going to embrace it. As scary as it seems too, because it's just like, I guess I don't deal well with confrontation. And then I was even thinking about it, and all these other memories popped up when I mean, the first big memory was, growing up, I grew up in a household where we were told what to do. We weren't allowed to talk back. We weren't allowed, we would get in trouble if we talked back. And we weren't allowed to question. We weren't allowed to speak up. And what I saw was the same thing. What was modeled for me about communication was that one person always overpowered the other. One person always overpowered the other. And so that's what I learned. Indirectly, that's what I learned. And I remember, I'll never forget it. I always felt so helpless. Being in the room and hearing it and seeing other things unfold and knowing, like there was an intuitive knowing, this is not the way to solve this problem, but feeling so helpless because I was a kid. I was a teen. And there was just this helplessness of like, I thought I couldn't do anything for fear of the consequences. And I remember when I finally stood up, because it wasn't handled right. Like there was a lot of other anger that was being projected out into the action, and my sister was getting the brunt of it, and it would eat me up alive inside. I remember it felt like I was being eaten up and not being able to do anything until I finally did something. And I was bracing myself. Like I remember my whole body was shaking as I was in this doorway. My sister was in this room crying hysterically, and I'm protecting her. and my body is shaking. And I was just like, no. And I remember that was the first time I ever confronted this parent. I'm like, no, this is not the way, is what I said. And I'm like, and then I stated what I saw. You are angry. You are already angry coming home. You're angry right now, and you're going, te vas a desquitar. Like, you're just going to take all of that and misplace it on her, when all of that anger isn't all for her. It's other stuff. And then she ends up bleeding. Like, that's not okay. And I remember this person was just like in shock that I would stand up to him. And I was literally like bracing myself, like I'm gonna get hit, like I'm bracing myself for it. And he just storms away, and he leaves. And I was like, I remember like that relief of like, wow, like I can't believe I did it. And I was shaking. And I guess it's still energy, right, that I'm clearing out through this process. I'm healing myself through this process. And these are life experiences that I'm needing in order to continue to heal, to get to where I need to be. And I'm giving myself permission to go through it, walking into the unknown, trusting in the process, trusting in my source, right? That I'm being guided and led to learn these lessons, to master these lessons for my higher good. So the other thing I wanted to share before I end, because I'm already 20 minutes in, I realized that pendulum thingy, the yes or no, when I meditated yesterday and I asked about this other person that I got the email from, and I realized I triggered this person. I know I did. And that feeling of like this, so that's my own so it's my higher self. It's my higher self communicating to me. Yes. So I was thinking about it yesterday. I'm like, well, then what's a no? Because so I don't know if I mentioned that I had a conversation with my mom about the magnets, and well, I mean, I guess I'll save that for the next topic of conversation if I'm able to move forward with that. But I'll share more about that in one way or another. I'll share more about the connection, but for now, that's where I'm at. That's what's happening. Those are the dreams I'm getting, giving myself permission to heal. I'm modeling it so that my clients can see. It's not easy. Even I have my own wounds, and I'm working on it, and I'm doing what's hard to model it for other people, so that they don't feel like they're alone in it. That's all. Alright, you guys have a good one. Hi, my name is Yubi, and in case you haven't figured it out, this footage is capturing my experience as I learn to navigate my personal spiritual awakening. I am learning that this experience is unique to each one of us, in whatever way we believe we are embracing living our truth. This just happens to be my journey. And despite me having a graduate degree and a license in clinical social work, this by no means is intended to replace any type of mental health advice. This is just me on a personal level, documenting my experience, shedding light on the truth that I am learning and discovering for myself, and really inviting you along for the ride. If by some magical chance you find this content to be helpful in any way, shape, or form, please click the like button, share the message, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have an Instagram account, a personal one, and one specifically for this channel that you're more than welcome to check out. I'm an open book. I have also created t-shirt designs. I'm wearing my favorite one right now, which is the North Node design, but I have that and other things that you can look at inspired by this process and journey, and I have the link in the description box as well as in the about section of my YouTube channel. So you're more than welcome to check those items out. Any type of support is great. Again, if you find this content really helpful or meaningful, sometimes when we take that step and be vulnerable, you know, with showing what's inside our hearts and what's really our truth, we realize that we're much more connected than what we thought we were. And so I hope that as I'm living this experience, and that you find some type of truth for yourself, or find some type of ability to heal in some way, just by relating, you know, just by knowing that you're not alone. That really has been my goal with this process, not just being able to connect with others, but really for my own healing. It's definitely been a therapeutic experience, and a very creative one for myself. So I thank you, and I wish you all the best, and you know, we'll see what else comes next for me. So